What's going on, football fans? It's your boys live. Well, not live. We've been live. We're not live this time around. But it's your boys, Pound for Pound ATL, coming at you pre-recorded today. I'm joined by my main man, Toby D, and we are joined by a special guest, Eric Robinson from the Falcoholic. Most of you probably know who he is, either interact with him on Twitter or read his work on the internet, but very talented journalist and scout in our world, our ranks, and we appreciate him taking time joining us. Eric, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. Missing football right now, but we got training camp coming up soon.
That we do, which is what brings, in a sense is what brings you here today. Like I said, last time we had you on, it was shortly after the Senior Bowl had wrapped up. You were down there live in Mobile viewing it, so we got your insights on some guys who are now on the roster, which we'll get into that here in just a minute. But now we are in the dead period, as we like to say, leading up to training camp. By the time y'all see this, training camp will be, about a week away. So as long as we can continue to stay out of the headlines, we have been in the headlines right now. Another one here recently with Young Wei Koo, Jeep getting stolen.
Oh, God.
Somebody said, welcome to Atlanta. He's finally in Atlanta.
Yeah, he's finally introduced. He's going through his initiation stage. That's what it was.
Man
right
said,
there.
I'm not worried about the Jeep. Just bring back my cleats is what he was.
Right.
You tell that New Orleans Saints fan, whoever did that, they need to go and bring his stuff back right now.
Bring back his cleats.
So we don't need any of that stuff.
But so yeah, we've been in the headlines in this off season, but not necessarily for the correct reasons. We obviously beat the dead, the horse to the ground with the Julio Jones trade. Trading one of your franchise players, a franchise pillar, is not something that most fans were wanting to see. What was your take and your opinion on that for our viewers?
I'll be lying if I sat here and said that it wasn't a little disheartening watching him leave. I was a fan first before I became a writer, and I've learned how to transition myself from a fan to a writer, but you gotta appreciate what Julio brought to the table
for sure, for
this team, for that franchise, and even for the city of Atlanta. Most may not feel this way, but I understand why it happened. Did I want to see it happen? Absolutely not. I didn't. I thought, and when the rumors first started, I thought it was BS. I mean, I said, look, this is the early in the off season, it's draft season. Like, of course, we're going to hear these type of rumors. But the more they started to matriculate, the more things started to, align itself a little bit. And, now it's going to be weird watching Falcons games without number 11 out there, man. It really is.
Without number 11 knowing he's not on your team. Not without number 11 knowing that he's hurt or knowing that he's sidelined, but knowing that he's not on the team is definitely going to be an interesting. Now I start to have an understanding of how, Chiefs fans must have felt watching Tony Gonzalez, get traded to here.
Yeah. It's something that, it's going to take a little while to get used to, definitely. But like I said, I understand why it happened. There were a few things here and there, of course, that occurred that I questioned, and I'm still kind of curious. I recently said this on one of our Falcoholic Live episodes. I still think what happened on Undisputed was a show. I still believe that Shannon and Julio were in the know as far as
you almost feel like they had to be.
Just the way that
because you've gotten no kind of press release out of it. You've got no kind of apology from Shannon. There's been no recourse whatsoever. You haven't, not that Jones puts out a lot of press releases to begin with, but you got no word out of Jones saying, hey, look, I didn't know I was on air. I wouldn't have done that, So, yeah, I tend to believe that
my whole thing is, look, Shannon is who he is. He's a very well-known personality. NFL players, of course, he has a deep connection with current NFL players. They may not watch the show Undisputed, but they know what time it comes on. You can't sit here and tell me they don't know. Because, that a lot of these athletes, they come out after such shows and they criticize Shannon Sharp or Skip Bayless because of their opinions. Right. So you have to know as far as what's being said and when it's being said. So for Julio to sit here and say, or for anyone to sit here and say that Julio didn't know that he was on air, I think that's BS. Again, you know what time the show is being aired. It's live. It's a live show. You know where Shannon is. If you see a phone call from Shannon, you're not going to sit here and say, I wonder what Shannon's up to. Wonder what he wants. To me, I think that's BS. Now, do I believe Skip was in on it? Absolutely not. I think he was left out of the loop. But I think this was something that was put together behind the scenes. Honestly, I think Shannon got in his ear a little bit and said, hey, you want to push the envelope on getting traded? This is how you do it. You take it public. And that's what he did.
Think about it like this, and Toby can back me up on this one. Something we had talked about years ago when they had the contract dispute, and they played both the Falcons organization and Julio Jones played it back and forth in the media. You know, so like he wasn't naive to that.
You notice around that time he started to be seen more publicly with other celebrities. That was around the same time. He was seen often with Migos, and he was working out with Terrell Owens that off season as well. What happened on Undisputed is not something he does. That's not Julio's ammo, which again to me feeds into why I believe it was a work. Because it's not something he normally does. I don't expect Julio to call into a show and say live on air, I know, because everybody knows. To me, everybody knows at that point, once that statement was said, the leverage swung clearly into the direction of the player. Because now it's the team is like, well, damn, that messes up our trade talks. That messes up, whatever offers we had on the table. Because now we have to get him out of here because now he says he's gone already. So again, I think this was a work. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. I will admit, but I honestly believe this was something put together, and those two were like, hey, let's see, let's try to up the ante a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not buying it. I said it from the get-go. I know a lot of people were saying on Twitter that they didn't believe that Julio would do something like that, but I wasn't buying it. I really felt like Julio was pushing the envelope because he wanted to get this thing over with, and now the team had to do it. And I'm glad they did it because everyone, you heard Calvin Ridley say, and you heard Matthews say that they felt like they still got some good pieces on this team, and much respect to Julio Jones, they still believe that they can do some things this year. And that brings me to the question I got to ask you, Eric, because I know you've seen this on Twitter too. As soon as that hit with Julio being gone, the question has become, hearing what Arthur Smith has said about not being in rebuild mode, and now you heard what Terry Fontenot said, that they didn't believe in rebuilding either. Do you believe that the Falcons are still in a win-now mode with Julio Jones gone? I got to ask you.
Yeah. I still think, let me address this. There were some fans who believed that the absence of Julio was not going to hurt the team a lot because of what they endured last year without him. You had a career year from Calvin Ridley. Matt Ryan was still able to throw for 4,500 plus yards, 26 touchdowns. They were still able, to put a few points up on the board without Julio. His absence is going to hurt. Maybe not extensively, but it's going to hurt. You're talking about, you're talking about Matt Ryan, he threw to this guy for 10 years. Tell me all of a sudden he's just not that first game against Philly, I guarantee you sometime in that first quarter, Matt may say, where's Julio? In the middle of a play, he may, where's Julio? And it's going to dawn him, Julio's not here. I do think there's yeah, it is. It is. I guarantee you it's going to happen. Maybe the first drive or two. Yeah, you may not hear it, he may not say it, but I guarantee he's going to take the field. It's going to be third and 6, and he's going to, where's my money guy?
Mm-hmm.
He's catching passes somewhere else now. I do think there's enough pieces in place for this team to be competitive. I look at this team right now without even knowing what they look like in training camp, and I'll say this is a team that I think in week 15, 16, they're one of those teams that are hovering around, a game above 500. They're in the playoff picture, but they need a little help. Yeah. That's how I see the Falcons, being that type of team this year. Are they? They're not in the realm of the Texans and the Raiders and the Lions. Like, those teams are terrible. Those teams are bad. The Falcons are going to be better than that. But to me, they're going to take a step back because of the absence of Julio. Now, if Julio was here, I'll be quite honest with you guys. I think this is a 11-12 win team if Julio was here.
Now, my question to that aspect, I get where Julio gives you, like, plus X, plus number of wins, but how does the weight of the new coaching staff, in a sense of, propose, like, how am I trying to say this here? Here we feel like a lot of us feel like our coaching staff, like, let us down quite a bit, whether it was on the defensive side of the ball, like Dirk Cutter's craziness or whatever. So
he should have never been rehired.
I'm trying not to go down that track because
that's a whole nother.
We'll be here for an hour talking about that one.
Right.
It was all I could do that year to try to. Anyway, no, because look, I'm not starting down that. Anyway,
right.
But okay, you had the mentality, and I don't know what it was, of players, coaches, what have you, of blowing leads, right? That's
right.
Flat out. I don't know if it was the, coaching philosophy on the defensive side of the ball, who couldn't stop anybody from scoring in the second half. But what does the presence of a new defensive staff with a fair amount of new defensive pieces? Now, I'm not saying that these are, ain't nobody going to sit here and pound the table for Eric Harris being, a stud player, but you no longer have Keanu Neal. You no longer have Ricardo Allen. You obviously no longer have Tack McKinley, Vic Beasley, Alan Bailey. There's a lot defensive pieces wise that you don't have, that you have replaced. And then most importantly, you replace it with the guy calling the shots who has the experience. Like, so in your mind, I guess in a weird way, does that kind of offset the presence of Julio in a weird sense, like in a scale balancing?
I get what you're just wanting to know or gauge the value of the new coaching staff at this point. You hear it all the time. Coaching matters in the NFL, man. And you can look at some of the recent Super Bowl teams, and you can obviously see what the coaching staff in place, what they were able to do, and how valuable they actually are. Kansas City is one of them. That's a team that was kind of built by Andy Reid, put those pieces together, and Andy Reid and his coaching prowess and that staff was able to, carve out a winner after a few seasons. I do believe, and it's easy for me to sit here and say, yeah, I love this staff. This staff looks great. They look better than the last staff. It's easy for me to do that without even seeing them coach a game. But I will say this. Swapping Dirk Cutter for Arthur Smith, not even as we're going to take out the head coaching title, just in terms of a play caller,
big time
upgrade. Getting a guy in place, and honestly, it's not even staff. I'm going to take it all the way to the front office as well. Getting a guy like Terry Fontenot here. I know he's inexperienced as a GM. This is his first gig. I get it. But 16 years, was it 16, 17 years in the New Orleans Saints system, what he was able to do, if you look back at those teams, I get it. We have a very nasty taste in our mouth when we say
why would you say that?
I understand. I completely. But I'm going to give him a little bit of credit during his tenure in New Orleans, because during his time there, you can look at that roster over the past few years and you can see his fingerprints here and there. You know, getting a guy like DeMario Davis in, bringing a guy like Malcolm Jenkins in, you know, those type of signings, getting a guy like Jared Cook last year, he was huge for them. Those type of signings were the backwork of Terry Fontenot. So having him in place, in my opinion, because he's able to scout rosters, to me, I think he's a better talent evaluator, at least on the pro personnel level, than Dimitroff is, because we can make a list. We can make a list of show on the bad free agents that he has brought in this year, or not in this year, but during his
Dante
time.
Robinson.
So I do think some of the pieces in place is going to help this roster. I do think better coaching is going to help this roster. There's still a void of talent. I will say that as well. They're, in terms of having a really good playoff roster, they're probably a good draft, maybe two away, to be quite honest.
The way I've kind of said it in my mind, and you kind of hit on it earlier, this year what I'm looking for in this team is a competitive team. A team that goes out there and, you know, fights and is in games and, you know, win some that you ain't supposed to, lose some close kind of deal, you know,
kind of sort of like what they did in 2008.
Exactly. You know, just that's kind of what I'm looking for. And then, you know, starting next year, you know, you start to make those, you know, leaps, those steps forward, so to speak. But now.
And I overall, I think I think the staff is going to really enhance this roster, especially getting a guy like Dean Pease in place as well.
I just have, you know, on, I think it was Friday, I released a video, like really like hyper focusing on the nickel defense, and the research like leading up to that video has made me really appreciate, you know, what Dean Pease brings to this coaching staff with his experience, and you know, listening to a lot of interviews that he's done, and watched, you know, the games that he has put forth. I'm really excited about what he brings.
His scheme, I've always been a fan of in the NFL. I always love defensive schemes that are able to attack you from different angles at different points, different players. I love that. You know, they brought in Dan Quinn and his 4-3 under scheme. You know, it was great in Seattle. It worked, but you kind of sort of knew where personnel was going to be in that scheme. That's how teams were able to kind of sort of dissect it during this time, because they've seen the same scheme for so many years. When it comes to Dean Pease, hell, even Tom Brady has said that Tom Brady doesn't know who's coming from where in a Dean Pease defense, and that's what you love. That's what I appreciate. I always love that. So I think him being in that system in Atlanta, you know, is really going to help that roster. I think he's really you're going to see this year. You may not see a above average defense. They're still going to be
some bumps and lumps, and
they're still going to be in the middle of the pack. But I think this is going to be a defense that you're going to see. You're going to see the athleticism really show out. You're going to see the speed. You're going to see his fingerprints on the field a lot more. And I appreciate having him in this organization.
So that leads me to not my, but I guess you could say Toby's first one. Toby, if you want to take it away there.
So, you know, I remember before the draft, you guys were talking about a certain player. I think all of us, like during the Senior Bowl, had great practices. And his name is Richie Grant. And I know he was one of the players you was high on. And it's another player I'm going to ask you about, but he's on another team with Star. We'll talk about him in a minute.
Okay.
But how do you feel having that guy who you talked about highly at the Senior Bowl and what you saw from him in practices do in person? Having him now as a Falcon on our team.
I'm excited. I think the Falcons really got themselves a ball hawk here. They, going back to the Senior Bowl practices, at the very least, Richie Grant was the best defensive player on the field, in my opinion, that entire week. You know, and there were some names there. He was the best defensive player on the field there. He made plays. You know, he was able to get think he had about 2 or 3 interceptions. Looked great in coverage and one-on-ones. Showed a lot of his versatility. And there's somewhat of a personal effect as well, because a former teammate of mine, I played semi-pro ball back in Florida several years back, and a former teammate of mine actually coached Richie in high school. So I knew of Richie beforehand, and I remember watching a lot of the film. And my former teammate, he's a corner. He's a former corner, and I remember watching a lot of Richie's film, and I'm thinking, like, man, that looks like my guy out there. That I played against. Just the the back pedal, the brake, like a lot of that looks very similar. But I'm excited. I wanted last year. I was huge. I was on the train of trying to bring in Antoine Winfield. I thought Antoine Winfield was going to be that playmaker on the back end. Granted, he didn't have the size. But, and I know the fans love Ricardo Allen, and he was a team favorite for a while, but that lack of instinct, that lack of playmaking ability, sometimes you just need a guy back there it's the fourth quarter. Somebody got to get an interception here. Somebody got to get a pick. Somebody got to make a play. It doesn't matter. You saw it with Antoine Winfield, and I think Richie Grant is going to be that guy. I thought he was the best safety in the draft. Of course, some feel Trayvon Moorick is the case, but
early on, I was a Moorick guy. I think when we talked originally, before you had put a spotlight on Richie Grant, I kind of fell in love with Moorick just simply because I was like, he was the only safety I saw teams leaving on an island, and I kind of fell in love with that because I wanted that, that true playmaker, so athletic, long guy. And then I remember we had that conversation after Senior Bowl, and you brought up Richie Grant, and I went back and watched some more tape of his and started digging a little bit more, and I was like, all right, fine, you know what, I'll put him 1A 1B with Moorick, and if we cut, and well, obviously we came away with him, I was like, all right, not even mad, not even going.
Moorick is probably the better athlete. He's faster, but you can't teach instincts. You can't teach playmaking ability. And they are clearly there with Richie Grant. Guys have it. Now, I'm not comparing him to this guy, but when it comes to the safety position, one name that comes to mind to me is a guy like Ed Reed. Remember Ed Reed? Ed Reed was a 2-star recruit out of Louisiana, and he wasn't the biggest guy on the field. He wasn't the fastest, but I'll be damned if that guy didn't make a play when the team needed it the most. I think that's what Richie brings to the table. He's, like I say, he's not going to be the biggest athlete in the world, but if you look at his tape, you look at a lot of the turnovers he created at Central Florida, man, a lot of them came in the fourth quarter. They came when the opposition was they're driving in the red zone. They get to tie the game up or get a key score. He came away with those type of plays. That's what this Falcons needs. This Falcon defense needs.
And what you're saying, Eric, that it brings out more. That was one of the ingredients the Falcons have missed for so long, is having that guy that can make a play. You saw, I had said, but you saw Tampa Bay make plays when they needed to make plays in order to keep things going and win games they need to win. And we need that. And Richie Grant is definitely a guy that helped do it.
Winfield was the same way.
Yeah, he was.
Winfield was the exact same way. Winfield's 5'8". Winfield's 5'8", 195. He's a small guy. He's probably smaller than Ricardo Allen, to be quite honest with you. But you throw his Minnesota film on, that guy was making plays, and I'm talking about game-changing plays. Yeah, that is what this team needs more than anything else. Look, you can draft athleticism. It's great. Look, the Raiders drafted Jonathan Abram, a hell of a specimen. This guy he can toss his shoulder pads around and he'll pop anybody. But if you throw on the tape, he's lost in coverage. He doesn't know it. He loses his assignments. That's what you don't need late in games when you're trying to make a game-changing or a game-winning interception. You don't need that. You're right. Richie's not going to provide that.
We've seen what athleticism only gets you. Like, you had that with Vic Beasley. You had that with, to an extent, Tack McKinley. You had, had that with some of these guys.
Even
even
Keanu.
Neal, and you can even really say, as far as athleticism is concerned, you could say Jalen Collins. He checked all those physical boxes, but he didn't check the mental boxes, or the
when it's fourth quarter and somebody's making that game winning drive, you're simply saying, man, I need someone with some athleticism. No, you're saying somebody make a play.
I need a playmaker.
I got tired of watching that just about every again in Dallas, Detroit, the Chicago game. Who else? What are the game? Even the second half of the first Tampa encounter when they had the lead in the second half, nobody can make a play like this. It was so discouraging watching that, man. And I think having Richie Grant on the field changes.
I think so. Toby, who else were you keying in on?
So I talked about the guy over there on the other side with the star. It makes me think if Dan Quinn was still here, we probably would have drafted him because he was another player that you like going into the draft. Mr. Micah Parsons. How do you think he is going to do in the Dan Quinn scheme? Seems like they drafted and signed every linebacker this year. Dan
Quinn's going for an all linebacker defense.
I know Micah was, somewhat had that whole legal thing hanging over his head, and I'm not going to address that. We're just going to leave that where it is.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the player Micah Parsons, he's special. And when it comes in that particular, to answer your question, Toby, I don't know if I can really answer your question because I don't know what the hell are they running in Dallas. Like, are they running a 4-3 or are they running a 3-4 or
are they running like a 2-5?
Yeah.
I don't know I don't know. Like, I want to answer your question, Toby. I really do. But I don't even know what scheme are they running, because if they want to run the Quinn scheme, great. You don't have the pieces for it, especially on the defensive line.
Yeah.
You have nothing but five. You have 5 tech guys up there and DeMarcus Lawrence. I don't get it. Now, all of a sudden, of course, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only Falcons fan that said this. Now you want to move Keanu to linebacker.
Officially move.
You should have did that when he was in Atlanta. But whatever. We're not even going to touch that either. But you said that there's 17 linebackers there.
Yeah, it is.
You got Vander Esch, Jalen Smith. You're moving Keanu down there. Now you got Micah. It's like, okay, who's who? You can't have all these guys on the field because now who's playing Sam?
Right.
I don't think any of those guys are legitimate Sam linebackers. If we're being quite honest, what are you doing? What are you operating here? I want to answer your question, Toby. I really do.
No, I mean, you pretty much answered it. Sounds like a luxury piece.
That's what it is. He's a great athlete. I think he's a definite defensive player of the year candidate if he gets plenty enough playing time. But I don't know how Dan Quinn is going to incorporate him. And to be quite honest with you, I don't know if Dan Quinn knows how they're going to put him out there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be, in that aspect, it's going to be interesting to view that one from afar to see what transpires there. But now let's swing it back towards Flowery Branch, towards the home team. We are running up on camp, and as it stands right now, one of the bigger holes that I see, and I wonder if you agree with me. I don't want to necessarily just pepper you with questions, but I don't know how else to. Yeah, I don't know how else to.
No. I'm fine. I'm having a great time. Come with it.
One of the bigger holes that I see at this junction, for this team is the offensive line. Like you have. I know he's everybody's favorite punching bag for whatever reason, but you have your left tackle in place, solid left tackle, average to above average in just about every metric. Hall of Famer, maybe debatable one day, who knows? But I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and slam, Jake Matthews for being a solid player. Center is one of your first interesting battles between Hennessy and Damlin. 2 undersized guys who reportedly are strong, whatever that actually means in as far as a center goes. I'm starting to get like deja vu of Peter Kahn's. I'm hoping not.
Dahlman is better.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Dahlman, to his credit.
I'll take that back. Dahlman is better. He does have some real good tape as far as his college film goes. Now, right guard obviously locked down with Lindstrom. Like Lindstrom and Matthews, even the coaches said it, are locked in. Now you tendered Gano at about $3 million. So you felt like you were going to have something in Gano, and then he goes and gets hurt. Which, do we even really know what he got hurt with?
I don't think anyone knows. It still hasn't been actually released at this point, and it's not even determined how long the timetable is going to be. So I know the initial report said he was probably out for the year. I wouldn't buy into that quite yet. I would let's just say he's out.
Right. That's what I saw, like indefinite. So we don't know there. Yeah. So now, to me, that creates the first hiccup, right? As far as position wise, because I felt like at worst they felt like Gano was going to be your swing tackle, at absolute worst. But I really felt like they felt like maybe Gano was going to challenge for that starting left guard spot. Right. But now you have Josh Andrews, which I'm glad Toby's in here with me today. He can defend. Yeah. He can defend Josh Andrews if he wants to. But everything that I have seen, he seems like James Carpenter 2.0, and I'm not happy about it. So you got him, and then let's swing on over to the right tackle with Caleb McGarry, who was TD's last reach. And is like, I don't know, like, okay, I've heard that Jalen Mayfield is taking snaps at right tackle, but I don't know. I can't remember if he was taking snaps with first string or if he was just taking snaps. Okay, so that could be, like, he could be the next swing tackle answer because of Gano. Because didn't he play right tackle in college, right? So maybe, anyway, I guess what I'm getting at is left guard. Who... Are we really going to rely on Josh Andrews? Because you're going to have to talk me off a cliff on this one.
I'm going to let Eric talk.
Oh, he's got his head in his hands. I don't know. This don't look good for you, Tony.
I'm really hoping, I'll be as blunt as I can. I'm really hoping Jalen Mayfield wins that job.
Now, okay.
No knock on Josh Andrews.
Well,
I'm sure he's a great guy.
Oh Lord, that sounds like you're breaking up with him. It's
they
me. It's not you.
They needed bodies. They needed bodies, and I get it. If he's a starter week 1 against Fletcher Cox, I'm scared. I really am.
Now,
there's honestly, I can't look at Andrews and say he's an upgrade over he's an upgrade over James Carpenter. I honestly can't look at, because Carpenter wasn't that bad in 2020. It just took him forever to finally be healthy and contribute consistently enough. He was okay. I mean, he wasn't a long-term answer, but he was all right.
Do I need to pull up blown block stats of James Carpenter? Because
I know there's plenty, but just last year they got by with him. But I'm not looking at Andrews and saying, man, that was an upgrade. I honestly don't feel that way. I feel like they're still kind of straddling the fence a little bit with Andrews in place. And look, if the guy comes in and has a monster training camp and clearly wins the job, by all means, do your thing, man. And I will be the first to say I was wrong, and I'm rooting for him. But right now, I'm hoping Jalen Mayfield wins the job, man. I think the team is kind of sort of hoping that, to be quite honest with you, to take a guy like Mayfield in the 3rd round. He played right tackle in college at Michigan, and he played it very well. And he looked pretty solid at times. And you got to keep in mind, he went against a lot of athletic edge rushers in the Big Ten. One namely Chase Young. Yeah. And, you know, there was a time or two where he kind of held his own with Chase Young at right tackle. But my issue with that is, what are you going to do with Caleb McGarry? Caleb McGarry is not a guard. No. For anybody out there that's thinking the transition from right tackle to left guard is easy, it is not. And there's no way in hell Caleb McGarry is going to understand that in one training camp and play left guard for this team in week 1.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
I tend to agree there. So, I'm pulling up. Like, I'm sitting here looking, do we know? Okay, let me give my thoughts here. I'm running a mile a minute here. Okay, Josh Andrews had a total of almost 300 snaps against the Jets. He had a total of 11 blown blocks, 8 blown pass blocks, 3 blown run blocks. Do we know, like, right off the top of our heads, what kind of scheme they were running up there? Was it more of a power scheme? Because I do know that
was a power. It's not right. Now.
I do know that the zone blocking scheme has been incorporated now up there, but it's also like a scheme that is more favorable to offensive linemen, like especially like not as talented offensive linemen. I mean, look at what San Francisco's been able to do. You know, with what they have had to put together out there as far as their run game goes. And you could also say the same thing at Tennessee last year. I mean, they lost like 4 or 5 of their linemen throughout the season and was still able to, produce. So that was my question. That was my only question really there is like, if he's coming to a scheme that may work better for his talents, then we might be, in a better situation.
Well, that's the thing. He's coming into a scheme that was, it didn't run parallel with what he ran last year. I
shouldn't have done that.
Like, it was more. Like, it was It really was more of a power scheme. It was more of an inside zone thing.
Not to derail and everything. Just for crafts and giggles, I pulled up Caleb McGarry, and you know what? Fine, I'm gonna back off of Josh Andrews because Caleb McGarry had 34 blown blocks.
Well, we all know this though, guy. He struggles.
He does.
He does.
That's just the first time I've seen it.
It was
on paper like that.
I'm the only one on the Josh Andrews train because I believe in Dwayne Leffler.
Right.
And this is one of the reasons why I'm on that train, because I believe that the skill set that Dwayne is looking for out of his linemen, I think Josh Andrews will fit. Now, one thing I can tell you for sure that I know Josh Andrews would do, which we haven't seen in a long time, is defend Matt Ryan. I mean, back when Matt Ryan had guys like Justin Blaylock, Tyson Claiborne, Todd McClure, and those guys, if you mess with Matt Ryan, they were in your A. Okay, we haven't seen that in a long time. You've seen guys like I.E., Alex Mack and them, Matt Ryan's tossed on the ground. Nobody's making a move. The only one making a move is little short Freeman. Yeah. And he's getting hiked up off the ground.
I'm going to say he's getting punted halfway across the field.
And you got to have your guys in front. And this is the first thing Dwayne Leffler, you heard him saying, we are letting our guys know we're not taking no S up front.
Yeah.
And if anything else, nothing else, your guys need to protect your quarterback that is behind you. Because we haven't seen it in a long time. And I believe that is the one thing that will change this season.
Here's the one thing about that, Toby. Watching Jalen Mayfield, he's a young guy. I think he's only 20, but I think he's started for Michigan for about 2 or 3 seasons maybe. He's got a nice amount of experience under his belt. The one takeaway I take from Jalen Mayfield when watching his game, he's a very aggressive guy.
Yeah, he is.
I would not be surprised if Jalen Mayfield gets a few unsportsmanlike conduct penalties because he's blocking somebody out of bounds or he's pancaking a lineman and he's staying on top of him after the play. That I saw that a little bit at Michigan. And that's the type of guy. I'm not saying he's a dirty player. He's not a dirty player by any means. But he's a very physical lineman that's going to get in your grill. And he's good. Like by the third quarter, you're going to say, "Man, I'm tired of this guy." Like it's just that's the type of guy he is. So you want, and I'm with you there, Toby. Like, yeah, you do. Matt Ryan does need some bodyguards up there. Absolutely, he needs some guys that's going to defend for him. And I think Mayfield can do that. The thing is, he's going to. I just said that McGarry can't transition from right tackle to left guard. But the only reason he couldn't do that is because of the lack of athleticism, the lack of lateral movement. Right. The footwork is not there for him. I think he's a natural right guard. Not to mention, he played right tackle his entire career.
That's what he's done.
Never played guard. Right. Mayfield has seen time at both. Right. Yeah. Mainly at right tackle. But he does have that athleticism to where he can transition. It's going to take a little time for him to get the guard, but he's that type of guy that he can chip the line and get to the second level. And even when it comes to, running those wide run schemes, he can get out into the perimeter. No questions asked. The guy can move for what he's at. I think he's 6'8", 330, around that. The guy can move for a big boy. Yeah. So that's why I feel, and like I said, I agree with you there, Toby. Like, yeah, he needs some aggressive guys up front. And I think Mayfield can do that. But again, I don't know. I don't know the athleticism that Andrews brings to the table. I didn't see. He wasn't in that type of scheme in New York. That required
and up until his time in New York, he was a bit player, a backup. So New York was the first time he's really been pressed into service. Into a long period of service. So.
And it wasn't a great offense, and it wasn't a run scheme that they're looking at right now.
You had, it was a dumpster fire for sure.
It was
up there.
It was.
But that leads me, into my next area on the offensive side of the ball that is still kind of a bigger question mark that I'm starting to turn my attention back to. It's kind of a combo deal here. Is the running back room. We signed Mike Davis.
Okay.
He did a yeoman's work out there in Carolina when McCaffrey went down. But the bigger thing I was concerned about with him is his production started to wane quite a bit in the latter part of the season. Now, whether that was a product of, hey, I've never been really asked to carry this much of a load.
Right.
Yep. Was it a deal where I know Joe Brady is another pass happy offensive coordinator, as far as that's his one of his calling cards is all the different route concepts and all that stuff that he runs up there. At least that's what people were touting when we were interviewing him, for our head coaching position. I'm not going to sit here and try to act like I've broke down a ton of Carolina Panthers tape, because I just haven't, So I'm not going to straight and try to pull a snow job on you there.
Right.
But needless to say, like I said, my question about Mike Davis is did the production wane because of lack of starts, over his career? Mm-hmm. Hey, I've never been asked to do this before. Mm-hmm. Was it more of a product of scheme? Because you could say that about our run game here under the guy who shall not be named. He didn't care about the running game, at all. And it was very evident, But then you throw in a guy like Cordero Patterson, who I conveniently, consistently forget that he's in the running back room. My brain will not let him be a running back. It's nope, he's a punt returner. That's it. Move on.
To me, he's a weapon.
Yeah. And that's what I would call him, a weapon. I
he's a weapon.
Almost like a Ty Montgomery, type.
Kind of,
type person. Because isn't he wearing 84 but definitely, for us as well?
Yes, he is. Yeah. Pitts tried to get that, and Cordell wasn't giving it up, which is fine. That's a really good comparison, but I think Cordell is a definite, better athlete, better runner. Got a lot more speed, of course, in the open field. And Jared, your point was definitely made there. He did kind of slow down. Mike Davis did kind of slow down a little bit, towards the back end of the season for him. And I think I believe he had 12 starts last year. And I think in the 5 seasons before that, I think he had probably like 10 or 11 total starts in those 5 years. So this is so last year was the first year where he was like, okay, yeah, I'm chucking, I'm toting this rock a little bit more than I expected or more than I'm used to. So I think he kind of hit a little lag, a little wall there because of that aspect. This year, I do think, he can be a capable runner in this scheme. I do think this scheme kind of fits him. No, he's not Derrick Henry, but who is Derrick Henry? Okay, let's just be honest. The guy's 6'3", 240. Like, how many running backs you know are like that? Right. But Mike Davis is capable of being very productive in this scheme, and I do believe he's going to get his first 1,000-yard season this year in this scheme. Now, it is interesting because you mentioned Jared, you brought up Cordero, so there's some question marks as far as depth goes. Are they going to really use Cordero as the running back too?
Right, or
I don't think they are.
See, I would lean more towards Quadre Olison. You talk about like
Correct.
No, there is no other Derrick Henry. But as far as stature goes, Quadre is 6'1", 232. He's a back that seems to be in the mold of what Arthur Smith has used. It's hard for me to say, oh, this is what Arthur Smith likes. I mean, we really don't know per se, because we don't know exactly how much influence he had on Tennessee's roster in his 2 years there.
Right. And he's said himself that, he doesn't need that type of back to make it work. He's publicly said that. Like, he doesn't have to have a Derrick Henry to have a productive run game. And, Olsen is capable. And Olsen's a little more nimble than you think he is for a 230-pound guy. He can kind of move a little bit, especially in between tackles when he's running on the inside, especially instead of running on the perimeter. But I'm interested in seeing how they incorporate him as well. I don't think Cordero should be the team's running back too. I hope that they don't.
I hope not either.
Because I honestly feel if they're going to give him running back 2 type numbers, he's going to wear down. He's going to hit that lag that we were just talking about. And you gotta have a guy like Cordero in the kicking game. You need him in the kicking game. You're bringing him in because he's a weapon, but he's got to be back there in the kicking game.
You need him to be able to. You need that field flipping talent.
That can flip the field. The Falcon. The day he was signed, I brought up, and he's expensive. He's like a $3 million kick returner. But I initially brought up the fact that the Falcons were, I believe they were like 28th or 29th in average field position last year. So the team, the organization, they saw that. The new regime saw that. They said, hey, let's not let Matt start at the 17-yard line.
Right. Let's get him closer to the 50.
Let's get a guy in here. Let's get it closer to 50 or hell. If he can break it 104 yards, go ahead, do your thing, man.
Hey, every time. But just go ahead.
Right. It would be easy. But I think that's probably the key reason they brought Cordero in, because they wanted to address the special teams. They wanted to address that particular element. But it is going to be interesting to see how they roll out, their running back room this year. I think Davis and Olsen is a decent 1-2 punch. It's not going to move the needle. It's not going to get fans in the seats, but it might accumulate some run yards.
A hammer, style running back room there.
Right. There's no elite game breaker.
The closest you got as far as like speed guys, like that or Hawkins, Javian Hawkins out of Louisville.
Right. And to me, he's an upgrade over Ito. Yeah. And I wish Ito the best of luck going forward. But Javian Hawkins last year in Louisville, He had 3 touchdowns last year that were 70 yards.
Right.
Yeah.
That led the ACC, I believe, and I believe that was like top 10 or top 15 in the country or something like that.
And then, you got you brought in his OC as our O-line coach now.
Exactly.
So you have
exactly. That guy's a bolt of lightning, man. He's a house call. He's a house call. The only thing about him is he needs to be patient as a runner. He likes to overrun his blocks, and that's something that he can learn at the NFL level. But I would love to see them kind of ease him in a little bit in their running back plans as well.
No doubt.
Yeah.
So next on, I guess, on the camp battle preview edition of Pound for Pound, yada yada. Anyway, I'm gonna flip it to the other side of the ball, and then I'm gonna shut my trap for a little while and let Toby do some talking or whatever. But
no, you good.
Pass rush. Where's our pass rush coming from? Okay. Look, me and Toby done. Like, we did a video together on creepers defense and simulated pressures. I don't know if I'm pretty sure you're familiar with those type concepts.
Yeah.
So that's one answer to me. The other answer is, like, in a sense, like the video that I just did the other day on the money backer position, which was the main focus of that video. Like the Logan Ryan, the Rodney Harrison, the Eric Weddle, type player that Dean P seems to find every stop he makes.
As Richie Grant.
Okay, so you're pulling up Richie Grant, right?
Yeah.
In my video, I compared Logan Ryan and Isaiah Oliver as far as, like, coverage skills and which neither one of them had great coverage skills, but they weren't necessarily.
No.
At least Logan Ryan under Dean Pease wasn't asked to cover a lot. He was asked to cover the flats, and he was asked to terrorize the quarterback. Because we talk about Dean Pease, like, coming from all different angles. Nobody knows where he's coming from. That seems to be a reason why nobody knows where he's coming from, is because of that money backer position. So you immediately bring up Richie Grant. So in your mind, do you see like Eric Harris, Jerron Harmon, and Richie Grant on the field as safeties in, like, a big nickel? Or do you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. The thing about his defense, man, and the only thing I can say about his defense is that you're going to see 11 guys on the field at once.
You're sure about that?
That's all I can say. That's the only thing I can say about his defense, and that's the only thing I love about his defense, because the fact that he can literally, as an evaluator, he can really incorporate guys anywhere. There may be times in the game where you may see cover 2 concepts with Harmon and Richie Grant on the back end, and you may see Eric Harris as your money backer. You may see Jalen Hawkins, who's a hell of an athlete.
Hawkins is a guy, I brought him up in the video. He's a guy that I think a lot of fans are, like, getting, like, letting him get lost in the shuffle, kind of deal. And then it's not just it's not just the money backer type stuff. I mean, you look at what he's been able to do with, I mean, hell, he had Courtney Upshaw listed as an outside linebacker in Baltimore. I wonder if he'll, like, let one of our followers, fans, however you want to label them, ask the question: did we think Marlon Davis would be back up on standing up like he was in Auburn?
That's a good question. I think Michael Walker would be.
Yeah, I think
Michael Walker. So Dean Pease was DC during their undefeated season in New England.
Yes.
And I believe that year was Hightower on the team that year.
Dante.
I believe Hightower was one of those linebackers that year. But he's coached Dante Hightower, and you realize, you realize how New England used Dante Hightower. You know, he played inside on first and second down, on third down. You know, he was able to stick his hand in the ground and wrestle quarterback because of, you know, his inability on the back end and coverage. I think Michael Walker can play that type of role. You've seen some things here and there where Michael Walker has got some looks, in practices at inside linebacker. That's the only thing I can really tell you guys about this defense. That, like I said, 11 guys are going to be on the field at one time. But you may not see a one guy at one particular spot every game, every play, all season. There's going to be a lot of shuffling. There may be some. You may see Marlon Davidson lined up as your stand-up Sam, depending on down and distance or depending on game scenario in that particular situation. You may see Michael Walker there. You may see a situation where, hell, he might get a little funky and have Deion Jones play money back.
See, we have another friend of the show, Adam Holloway, has floated that as well. Deion Jones being, a guy.
He is quite possibly the best pure athlete on the defense right now. We're being honest. You may see some situations like that. You never know, and that's what I love about it. When it comes to pass rushing element, I will say this also. There's probably not going to be a guy on this team that's going to get 10 or more sacks. I don't think.
Okay, you remember?
I think this is going to be a collective.
You remember years ago? I think it might have been defense. Mike Nolan that had the sound.
It was.
You know where I'm going, don't you know? Talking about he'd much rather have 10 guys with 2 sacks than 2 guys with 10 each.
Yeah.
All right, whatever. Yeah, okay. Sure. You say so. All right. You rather have 4 Dante Fowler or 10 Dante Fowlers instead of 2 Chase Youngs. All right, whatever, cool.
Speaking of Dante Fowler, do you think there's obviously he's going to be leaned on heavily to provide a pass rush. He's betting on himself to provide a pass rush with the contract that he reworked. Are you shaking your head? What are you shaking your head? He didn't even let me give him a statement. He's shaking his head over here. Okay, so you think Dante Fowler is going to be on a milk crate or a milk carton again? Probably. So. He did probably so.
Probably so. I just look. I don't have a whole lot of faith in him. I love what the front office did with his contract, which is something that the previous regime should have done to his contract. It's very incentive laced, which it should have been that. It should have been that because they pretty much gave him all that money based off 1 year in LA. But this front office, this tenure right now, they're looking at it and say, "Hey, man, you want a payday? You want to be that premier pass rusher? Then show us." So it's really he's not making a ton as much as he thought he would. Like I said, it's incentive based. I think Grady Jarrett is going to lead the team in sacks this year, and I think he's probably going to get 7, 8.5, maybe.
Yes.
I don't think you're going to see a guy get double-digit sacks this year. It's going to be a collective effort. You're probably going to see about 6 or 7 guys with at least 3 sacks.
4 sacks is kind of what I was thinking.
3 or 4 sacks. Yeah.
Because if you go back and look at
that might be.
Go ahead, Tommy.
Yeah, go ahead. Now, see, we've already heard Dean P say it openly and admittedly on the game that Grady's going to be all over the place. They are expecting this guy to be the man. And, he keeps in shape every year, too. I'm sure you guys have seen videos of him recently with him, Deion Jones. This guy, man, he looks scary every year when I see him. I don't know about y'all, but, he definitely is a guy that continues to show every year and improve every year.
He's still trying to – even at this point in his career, he's still trying to prove himself, man.
Yes.
He's still kind of sort of in the Aaron Donald shadow. So this guy is taking the field every game saying, I got to prove myself.
And that's the mentality that you got to have. Like, to be great, like, let's be honest. That's what, even in our, our own daily lives of going to work, that's what separates, the good workers, the businessmen, the whatever you want to call it, whatever level you aspire to, what drives your success is your want to and your desire. And, we have drafted some players in the past that just didn't have that. that just didn't have that want to or didn't have that desire to continue to try to be great. You know, like it seems like Grady reminds himself every day that, you know, he was drafted in the 5th round, you know, and that he was, you know, disrespected or whatever you want to call that, you know, lives in the shadow of Aaron Donald, you know, as far as, you know, undersized, you know, defensive tackles, you know, or, you know, penetrating 3-techs, whatever you want to label him as. But let's see, Toby, is there any other positions? I could keep going. I'll ask you about everybody on the roster if you.
All means.
Yeah,
because I mean,
I
was gonna say because like you know we talk about we're thinking about pass rush and stuff of that nature. You know, guys like I wonder what it's time for guys like Kaminsky to show something. You know, you're coming into your 3rd year. You know, it's I heard somebody say when I first got into the like draft analyst side of it, or paying attention to that side, not trying to say I'm an analyst, but I heard somebody once say that for the most part, you don't know what somebody's going to be until about year 3. And that has been a pretty good like gauge, like a pretty good, like, yeah, you're going to have some guys who come in and year 1 or year 2 absolutely lock it down. But those guys are generally picked in the 1st round for a reason, you know. But when you start to get into those later rounds, it takes some of them guys 3 or 4 years to really, you know, get the understanding, get the trust of the coaching staff, get, you know, it's a process that they have to go through. So you're coming up on year 3 with guys like, you know, John Kaminsky. Do you see like a role for him? Like, do you see him carving out a role? I guess is a better way to put that.
Yeah, I think Kaminsky can be, you know, that prototype 5-tech guy. I don't know if he's going to be. I don't know if he's going to actually win a starting gig going into week 1, but I think he can carve out a nice little role because of his frame. He's 6'7", real long arms, and he's more of an athlete than a lot of people give him credit for. He played high school football as a quarterback, so the guy has some athleticism. He's not just a stiff out there. And I think this scheme with Pease is going to help him a little bit. Like I said, I think he can carve out a role. You know, I don't think he's going to be, you know, he's not going to be, you know, Chris Jones-esque as a 5-tech. You know, he's not going to be a Pro Bowler, but I think he's good for, you know, 3 or 4 sacks and just being that solid run defender on the edge. Right. I'm expecting a substantial step in the progression of Marlon Davidson. Like I really like this has to be. I know it's year 2 and he had a funky year last year. I get it. He dealt with some injuries. He even had COVID as well. But the guy was drafted out of this scheme. Right. So this scheme fits him more, like as far as a glove. Now, if he wants to stand him up and let him rush the passer every now and then, cool, I get it. Auburn did that a little bit more than they should have. Okay. It was really exclusive when it came to him, and he did it so many times that you couldn't help but notice that he's not a natural outside linebacker.
Like he stood out like a sore thumb. Like that's a big man to be standing up.
They just didn't have legitimate edge rushers, and somebody had to do it. So they were like, "All right, Marlon, you're up. Like, let's go see what you can do out there." But I think there's great potential with Marlon and Grady opposite each other. I really, to me, they're very similar in terms of the athleticism, in terms of the quickness off the snap, in terms of their effort, their motor. They're very similar. But like I said, Davidson just had a funky rookie year. And we're just going to classify it as that.
I mean,
the entire NFL
I was about to say, you had you had the weird off season, and then you have like, you know, your lack of off season, and your coaching regime gets blown up like midway through the season. So I like in a lot of ways I throw out last year's rookie class as just an anomaly. You know, I'm glad
Right.
No preseason,
right.
by the way.
Right.
Right.
No
Right.
preseason.
Like I'm glad we got what we
Yeah.
got out of AJ Terrell, and you know that was a lot more than I was kind of expecting. Really, I'm really
He remember he caught
Yeah,
COVID early in the year
exactly.
too. So imagine if he had a regular
Right.
offseason as well. I mean, he was pretty solid last year for me.
Yeah.
So imagine if he had a solid offseason and a normal rookie year.
Right.
I'm expecting
jump
big
from
things
him,
from him as well. Yep.
So
Yep.
with we've pretty much bounced around, you know, touched on just about every aspect of the team. What battle are you like? What's got your eye going into camp? What has Eric Robinson going? All right, this is what I want news about. This is what I'm looking for. What has you like? What's got your interest peaked?
That wide receiver tight end room. I want to know who's being lined up where.
Right.
You know, I want to know who's who's first team, who's second team, who's being incorporated in certain spots. That room right there is very intriguing because, of course, as we mentioned to open the show, there's no Julio. So we know what we're going to get out of Calvin. Calvin's going to be a stud. We get that.
But can somebody fill that Calvin void, so to speak?
Can somebody fill that Calvin void? They're kind of expecting Russell Gage to do it. We'll see what Russell Gage can do. I think Russell Gage should be their primary slot guy. But you know what? There's an alien that they just drafted at 4th overall this year. That can also play in the slot. He can play in line. He can play X. He can play Y. He can play Z. Hell, he probably can line up in the backfield.
I don't think there's plenty.
Maybe can do a little wildcat if we want to. Why the hell not? I think I will say this. Yes, there's no Julio, and I think that takes a lot away from the offense. I think that makes the offense. If Julio was here, to me, that would be an elite offense. I don't care that there's no Derrick Henry back there. Mike Davis would have benefited from having Ridley, Julio, Pitts, Hurst on the field at the same time. I can pick whatever run lane I want to go through. Like that's what Mike Davis would have had. But with no Julio, I think the offense potentially goes from elite to still a very good unit.
Yeah,
I think Arthur Smith has a duo at tight end that he didn't have at Tennessee. He had Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith kind of sort of came on his own, but he didn't really came on his own until Delaney Walker was out of the picture.
Right.
So really, he just had Jonnu Smith there as that guy that was able to, carve a role and find his niche in that offense. Now you give him a guy like Kyle Pitts.
And then you pair Kyle Pitts with Hayden Hurst.
Hayden Hurst is not that bad of an athlete. I know he doesn't have the numbers.
His numbers last year are almost identical with Jonnu Smith.
But yeah, and he had career highs across the board. He had career highs in catches, yards, average, and touchdowns last year. So, the guy was able to do a little something, and let's keep in mind, Dirk Cutter was calling plays for him. So let's give that guy some credit, okay?
Nails on a chalkboard, that name.
So I think Arthur Smith sees this duo, this tag team right there at tight end, and say, "Hey, man, you can line up Hayden at Z receiver, or you can line him out,
or you
can line him
like you could throw Hayden, like you could come out with Hayden in an H-back position, or like a fullback position, and then motion him back out wide, to get a more favorable look,
Definitely. You can take a piece of what Chicago did and say, hey, you know what? Let's really throw him for a loop. Let's line Kyle out at X. Put Hayden in the slot. Let's line up Cordero in line.
So you're talking about Chicago? You're talking about with Dave Ragone?
Right, exactly. If you're a defense and you're like, okay,
hold on now.
Pitts is over there. Hurst is right there. Cordero is in line. Where's Calvin's at Z?
Well, hold on.
All right, hold on. All right, hold on. Wait a minute. This don't look right, guys. This don't look right. Hold on. You told me Cordero is in line? Wait a minute. Hold on. Like I think he's got some pieces here where he can really throw some wrenches in place. So that's the one thing I'm looking at this offseason in training camp. That wide receiver tight end room. Who's playing where? Who's playing what? We mentioned rookies. I'm keeping my eye on Frank Darby.
High energy Frank Darby.
To me, Frank Darby was also at the Senior Bowl. And Frank Darby made some plays at the Senior Bowl. He had an ugly last year. Last year was a bad year. He was dinged up. I think he only played in 3 games. He missed most of the season. He didn't come back until their very last game of the season. So, but if you throw on the tape, Frank Darby is a guy that knows how to make plays deep. He's not fast. He's not elusive. He's not big. He's not super strong. But for somehow, some way, when you need him to run a go route and you put that ball up in the air, he's going to come down with it. And if he doesn't come down with it, he's going to come down with the ball in the cornerback's hand if he's just so happens like he's that aggressive when it comes to just going up to get the ball. I want to see how Arthur Smith eases him into the scheme because I think he can be a very dynamic deep threat at the next level. And he was drafted in the 6th round, but I'll be quite honest with you, I think he was underdrafted. I had a 4th round grade on him.
A lot of things I saw had like a 4th and 5th round grade on him.
But he failed because of the injuries and stuff like that. And someone a few weeks ago asked me about my pro comparison for him, which I really don't like.
I'm not a big fan of pro comparisons myself.
But if I had to toss a name out there for Frank Darby, as far as the type of, not the player he's going to be, but the style that he can bring to the table, Michael Gallup from Dallas is the player that I kind of mentioned when it comes to Frank Darby. Again, Gallup's not huge. He's 6 feet, $190. Not the biggest receiver in the world, not the fastest receiver in the world, but when Dak needs to go deep, when Dallas needs to go deep, Gallup's making those type of plays.
He's the one they draw up.
He's the one they draw up. Yeah. Frank Darby averaged 20 yards per catch as a sophomore, I believe, and then 19 the year after that.
So it's not a fluke, per se.
So it's not a fluke, and he put up those numbers playing alongside Brandon Ayuk. And he also played across from N'Keal Harry one year as well. So this guy is not just a name. This guy has some game to him, man. And at the very least, the fans are going to love his attitude.
He's going to be he's already kind of a fan favorite,
Yeah, that is the one thing that has caught a lot of people. And I said this when we drafted him. I knew that already, that was going to be one of the biggest draws. But I am still not convinced about the player he is yet. That's just me. That's just me.
Why is that?
Well, I know practice is everything. Don't get me wrong, practice is everything. But unfortunately, I was not able to be blessed to be at the practices to watch what he did in the Senior Bowl. But when it was game day, I don't know if it was because of the game or what. One thing he has shown me, he can get open with the best of them because he got open a lot. But when he got open, balls dropped. Now, maybe that was because he hadn't played in a while. He was kind of still trying to knock rust off playing an actual game type setting. And I just need to see, I need to see if he can be that player. Could he? I believe he could, but I need to see it. I just need to see it.
Throw in the game tape.
Yeah.
Go back to his junior year. He had a career high that year in yards. And that was the year he averaged 19 yards a catch. And he played alongside Brandon Ayuk, who was the wide receiver one. But throw on that game tape, and look at some of that film from that season, and you will see. As a matter of fact, go to the Oregon game that year, his junior year.
Okay.
And I guarantee you'll look at that Oregon game, and you'll say, "Damn."
Yeah, I definitely will go back and watch some film on him just to see where he really fits. It's just right now, My eyes can't see that far. But I definitely
I get it. No, I get it.
I definitely will go back and look at that film, man, and see. Because look, anybody get on the Falcons, I'm excited about them because I love my Falcons, period. So I'm not saying I'm not going to support them. I'm going to support them. Number 88. I'm going to support them. But I just need to see if he can carve out a spot on his team. And it's definitely wide open with Julio being gone.
That creates a void.
I love Russell Gage.
It is.
But I would not guarantee Russell Gage as the absolute guy number 2. I actually think that could be a wide receiver by committee as well, depending on what's going on, just like the running back room that I see.
Yeah, because I mean, you still got to figure in Tajay Sharp, who has, who had his best year.
And I was going to talk about
who had his best year with Arthur Smith. So, does he come back in? Is he able to, reconnect and produce? He was an interesting pickup in the wide receiver room. But yeah, I think I'm with you. The wide receiver room is definitely interesting. Wide receiver and running back room, as far as the two.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's no Julio, of course, but there's some talent. There's a lot of from top to bottom.
There's a lot of like similar talent, like the way these guys are built and how they tend to, play and operate. So I'll be interested to see how Arthur Smith deploys his wide receivers. I'm really excited about the tight ends.
That was an element, like I said, that he didn't have in Tennessee. And you also have to keep in mind, Arthur Smith didn't really have a boatload of talent at receiver in Tennessee. Sure, he had A.J. Brown. Corey Davis came into his own last year. But it took Corey Davis about 2 or 3 seasons to finally get his legs up on them. And outside of that, for the casual fans, name me another Tennessee receiver that was, they were able to get the job done in the passing game without a ton of elite talent at receiver. So I think Arthur Smith is looking at what he has now and say, hey man, I can work with
this. That's it. And I think that's I think that mentality is happening on both sides of the ball, like quite a bit. Like a lot by necessity. Obviously you couldn't go out and spend a ton. So you had to get creative, right? Correct. And I think the front office did an amazing job of getting creative, of bringing in talent, filling in holes before they ever got to the draft, and then, fortifying it even more in the draft. So, I believe, does the talent scream top to bottom? No, but we have seen what happens when talent does scream top to bottom with this team. Mm-hmm. And, we have seen talent, heavy, top-end rosters with no depth, and that didn't bode well. You know what I'm saying? Now it seems like, we may not have the caliber of talent, but it does seem like it is evenly distributed across the roster. So
it's not only that, but there's an elevation in talent on the side.
I think that's going to be a bigger upgrade. Is what the brain trust that is getting this talent ready on a week in, week out basis. The ones who are coaching up on the sidelines during the games. That's where I think the major talent upgrade has happened.
I do have, I appreciate Arthur Smith, and I think he's definitely, he's still coming into his own as a play caller, and I think it's only a matter of time until this guy is elevated as one of the better play callers in the league. But I will say this. When it comes to, because this is a brand new role for him, because he was a play caller in Tennessee, but now he's wearing 2 hats. Now he's the head coach,
the man in charge, and
the play caller. Can he handle that? That's going to be, it's interesting to see. Can some guys, we see it with Kyle Shanahan.
We see it with, in a sense, with Andy Reid.
With Andy Reid, Kevin Stefanski up in Cleveland. Those guys. Well, those guys have been able to, really come into their own. But then you see guys like Jason Garrett. When Jason Garrett was in Dallas, it got to be a lot for him at times. It's kind of sort of hurting Matt Nagy a little bit in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Even he's starting to kind of, and he came from that Andy Reid tree. So, I get that a lot of these guys want to have that responsibility in that role, but not everybody can be able to, handle that week in and week out. And I'm hoping he is, because if he can, it's going to cramp the team. It really is.
It's gonna come down to, the guys like Dave Ragone, the guys like Charles. Is it Charles London?
Charles London.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna be like, it's gonna be a lot, not a lot, but it's gonna be like paramount that those guys do what they're supposed to do to get the information to Smith and to have that game plan. But it's
some guys can make it work.
Some guys can't. Like we'll know in a sense pretty quickly. If we start hearing the whole well, I guess I'm not going to call plays and this guy will call plays and then I'm just going to start throwing my hands up.
Right.
Like he needs to be like, nope, I'm the guy. I'm calling. Like this is.
We don't need to get any of that in 2021. Let's say that.
Yeah, exactly. 2025. Come on now. But well, man, I think that's a pretty conclusive look at training camp coming up. We've been chatting almost an hour and a half now, which is insane.
You don't even realize. You don't even realize.
No, you don't. You just start talking, and then all of a sudden, that's what you get when you get passionate people, right? And that's But that's who we try to talk to.
As you stated as well, man, you just want to have a conversation. Sometimes that conversation kind of goes on.
Well, Eric, we very much appreciate you taking the time out of your day on this Sunday evening and jumping on here with us.
Yes, sir.
Anything other than the Falcoholic, obviously people can find your stuff there. You want to throw out your Twitter handle or anything of that nature?
Yeah. Find me on Twitter at _Eric_Robinson. Just give me a follow. I tweet a lot about football, primarily a little bit of music here and there, a little bit of workout stuff here and there as well. Somewhat, I'm a gym guy, man. That's the military in me, along with playing football for a little bit as well. Like I love. It's therapeutic, It's therapeutic. I like to get in there and just leave it all.
I will say this though: if y'all gonna interact with Eric on Twitter, you better come right. And
I was just getting ready to say that, but you said it perfectly.
I'm born and raised Columbus, South Carolina, man. I'm a Southern guy at heart, man. I try to be as open and friendly with everybody. Just don't come sideways.
That's a lot of things.
I can also bite your head off if I need to. Okay, that's just the thing.
Eric, man.
So I try to keep it as professional as possible.
Well, yeah, we got to do that, but either way, like I said, we appreciate it, and as far as our stuff goes, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Grim1128, GRIMM1128. Toby D.
Toby D 1991. All day long till I change.
There you go. And this next week will be camp will officially start. We'll have a live show next week, and then we'll figure out after that if we want to go back to going live every week. But you can follow us, like I said, on Twitter, find our stuff on YouTube, and follow, subscribe on Patreon if you want. If not, it's cool. But as always, Falcons fans, rise up.
Rise up.